Question 12. If you were able to live to the age of 90 and retain either the body or the mind of a 30-year-old for the last 60 years of your life, which would you want? I think this question seems to be a little bit easy. Now, there's actually a cheats way out of this question, because you could say, well, the mind is actually something that's created by the brain. The brain is an organ. The organ is part of the body. So if I choose the body of a 30-year-old, then I'll actually get the mind of a 30-year-old for free. Hooray! So I'll choose the body. But that's a bit of a cheats way out. I think we're going to have to say that for the purposes of this question, the mind is somehow not the product of the brain, or the brain is not an organ. It's separate from the body in some way. So we can either live till we're 90 and have the body of a slowly deteriorating, aging, stooping person, getting weaker and accumulating niggles and aches and so forth, and your ability to jump high and run fast degrades, but you're still upstairs as sharp as a tack, or the other way around. Now, in the case of the other way around, I've known people who are over 90. Frankie Manning was almost 95. He died shortly before his 95th birthday, and he still had all his marbles. Now, yes, you could tell he wasn't a young man. He didn't speak quite as quickly as I'm sure he did when he was 30, but he still had everything going on upstairs. And I've met a reasonably large number of very old people who have definitely got all their marbles upstairs. Everything up there is essentially working, maybe not quite at the speed of their youth, but fast enough. So it strikes me that choosing the body is still a good option, because everybody's body ages at the moment. That's something which perhaps science will be able to change in the future, but for the moment, I have to accept that my body will get older. I will ache more, I will be able to bend less and jump less, but there is a reasonable chance of my keeping my marbles until a ripe old age. Granted, not everyone in my family has, but it's a risk that's not so horrendous to take. 90 is a reasonable age. I once took one of those tests, where you write down whether you smoke and how old you are now, what sex you are, how often you do exercise, and this is plugged into some algorithm or whatever, and it spits out a number. And I think it said I was going to die when I was 87 or 88, somewhere around there. So 90 is only a tiny bit further. So yes, I'd choose the body, because my mind, there's a reasonably large chance that my mind will be fine until that age anyway, whereas there is no chance of my body being fine until that age. I think maybe then a better question is, would you like to have a fit body but be senile for a long time? Or would you like to have everything working up here, but in a body that doesn't really work very well? Now, of course, there are all sorts of degrees of bodies that don't work very well. But I think if it's the usual sort of body that an elderly person has, so I can walk around, but my eyes aren't what they used to be, my hearing's not what it used to be, and I can't run and jump and so forth, but I'm still essentially able-bodied. In that case, I'd go for the mind. If I'm, I think I would go for the mind then, because I can still talk to people, I can still appreciate the world, I can still be useful to society and useful to myself. Maybe I could still write books, read books, appreciate films and literature. I could do all of that still, whereas being senile in a healthy body, you're not really using the body, you're just sitting in a chair and staring out of the window in a body that could run and jump, but you're senile and you're not really with it. So if you're not really with it, then perhaps you're not fully participating and appreciating. I think that's the best word, appreciating. You're not fully appreciating the life you're living. So yes, so phrased as the question stands, I'll take the body, thank you, but rephrased in my own way, I'll take the mind. You probably know the expression mens sana in corpore sano. This is a quote from Juvenal. It's usually translated as a healthy body and a healthy mind. And he was. People often say that that the two are very important, and that what he was stressing, what these ancients knew, was that a healthy body was every bit as important as a healthy mind, and that's why they went to the gymnasium and praised exercise and so forth. Actually, that's not Juvenal was talking about at all. What he was talking about is things you could wish for. You could wish for wealth, you could wish for power, you could wish for so forth. And he showed in his argument that whatever you wish for is likely to backfire. Yes, you could wish for wealth, but then everyone's going to be jealous of that wealth, and you're going to be terrified about losing that wealth, and then you'll find that all sorts of people suddenly start liking you, but they're not really your friends, etc. There are all sorts of drawbacks of wishing for wealth if you're actually going to get that wealth. And he concluded that the only sensible things to wish for were a healthy body and a healthy mind and a healthy body. And in that sense, I think he was being quite sensible. While I'm on this topic, I know it's a bit of a sideline, nothing to do with the question, but never mind. He's also very famous for his quote, "Quis custodiet ipsos custodiens." Custodes. Sorry, my Latin isn't quite what it was. And this is usually translated as "who watches the watchman," although actually a better, more accurate translation might be "who guards the guards." But you may think of it as the way it's usually used today, where people talking about freedoms in a modern democratic society and the possible encroachment of tyranny and so forth, and the way we should all be terrified about a police state and spies and so forth. Who actually is watching these people who are given power? Who watches the watchman? I say this because you might be amused to know, and I know this is a bit of a sidetrack, but here we go, is that that wasn't what he was talking about at all. No. He was talking about how women sleep around a lot, and that there's almost no way you can stop them from sleeping around. And yes, you can hire guards to stop your wife sleeping around, but she'll just sleep with the guards, because what are you going to do? Hire guards to guard the guards? And when does this stop? So yes, you may think it's an incredibly profound thing about freedoms and democracy, but no, actually he was just talking about infidelity amongst wives.